Joining us, Nairobi Senator Johnson Sakaja on the far end. In the middle, Kibra Member of Parliament Ken Okoth. The question we've been asking you, Monica, can we put it up? Are these two gentlemen what we, you, all would consider the future of Kenyan politics, despite the fact that they stand on opposite sides of the political divide? Right now, so far, your answers. 67% of you say yes, they are. 33% of you say no. Keep sending your answers. SMS number 22422. You can tweet us at Koinange Jeff, at Sakaja Johnson, at Johnson Sakaja, at Ken Okoth. Is it Sakaja Johnson? At Ken Okoth, at Citizen TV Kenya, hashtag JKLive. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Okoth Kenneth. Well, they'll get it. Monica, can we start with that clip from last week, if you don't mind? That clip from the Pan-Afrique. Monica, do we have it?
You had to?
Is it ready? Is it ready or no? It's not ready? Okay, we're getting that clip. Okay, you can explain it, by the way. We don't even need to see it because most people probably saw it. So there was a bit of a fracas, guys. You were both there in different capacities. Yes. And then all hell broke loose. Can one say that?
All hell broke loose.
And Anthony Oluoch was slammed to the ground, wrestled to the ground, and you came to his rescue, gentleman that you are. Well done. But what was the whole thing? Mheshimiwa, what was the whole thing about?
I wasn't there for the fight. I left. You
left before the fight.
You left before the fight happened.
Sakaja.
First of all, Jeff, allow me, I think on behalf of all the leaders who were there on that day, from NASA and from Jubilee, to apologize to the Kenyan people for that show. I think it must never get to that level. No matter how much we differ on our politics, no matter how much we believe very strongly on different issues, we still have one country. And as I was saying while I was rescuing my colleague, small things are what it takes to break a country. And that day, I must also take part of the blame. I think
there's a clip there. Yeah, we're watching it right now.
There's a clip that's showing.
Yeah.
Because I remember before the press conference happened,
right,
I was in Githurai. I was checking out polling stations, just going around the city. And a colleague of mine called me and told me, you know what, there's a press conference we need to respond to. And, you know, very innocently, said, the media is still here and they're live, so why don't you come and have a statement you can respond to. So NASA had a press conference at Pan-Afrique. And so, of course, when I had finished, it was past 5. So the polling stations were closing, they were beginning to count. So I sped all the way to Pan-Afrique, and I found my colleagues. I remember I came to say hi to you guys at their table. They had just done their press conference. They were having tea. I'm not sure who paid for it. I'm not sure who paid for that tea. But so we went on to do ours. After they had done, the media was still in place. And during the course of that press conference, the leader of majority in the Senate was speaking. And you know, he told Kenyans, you know, don't fight about us leaders, we're friends. In fact, my colleagues are waiting on the other side for me to pay their bill.
Yes.
So I think they didn't take that lightly.
Didn't go down well.
Yeah, so they came, led by Oluoch, they removed our microphones on live TV. And of course we had to restrain ourselves because we said, look, if we create a show here, it's not good for the country. So we walked out. They did the second press conference. And once they were done with the second press conference, then we came back because it was my turn to speak. And then there was chaos. The next thing I saw, nominated Senator Kwamboka was shouting, saying people are trying to accost her. You know, then Oluoch came running under heavy attack. And I got fed up. I was like, no, we cannot do this. And even if such a situation happens, it must never be in front of cameras. And it should never happen, really. Because Ken has kids, I have kids, you know. I tell my kids not to fight. When they go to school and they had seen me fighting and the teacher tells them, why are you fighting? I'll say, no, I saw Dad fighting yesterday. I saw somebody else fighting.
Yeah.
So I think first I take the blame because I believe that we should probably have looked for a different venue. Yeah. If it was an ideal situation, like in Parliament, we have one venue. NASA holds a press conference and we come after, and whatever it is, it's banter and we joke about it. But when they started beating up on Mheshimiwa Oloch, you know, I was really upset, and I had to send out those guys. Yeah. I had to come and beat, you know, in between him and those guys, so that if they're trying to beat him, they'd have to beat me first. Yeah. Yeah. And I had to stop it, because imagine what would have happened if that became fatal, because he was really beaten up. And it is not right.
And so if you all joined in, that would have been very unfortunate. Much more. It was pretty unfortunate, huh?
And you know what was happening? And Ken knows. Ken knows Nairobi. He's a member of Nairobi. I'm the senator of Nairobi. Yeah. If we stayed there for another 15, 20 minutes, already my supporters were coming. Yeah. NASA supporters were coming. Yeah. There'd be a fight there, and you never know what would have happened to this country. Yeah. Just because of a slur over a car who paid a bill of tea. Right. So I think as leaders, we also need to be a bit more sensitive and careful about what we do in public. We really must be careful. But I'd like to hear it from Ken's point of view. I don't know what he saw.
What did you see?
You know, the first of all is, let me apologize to everybody in the country that this had to happen. Leaders in this country are not supposed to behave in this way and get themselves in a situation. Number two is to say, if you look at that clip there, this is Pan-Afric Hotel. It has CCTV at the entrance. There is a security checkpoint. There is another point you're checked in before you walk in. There is cameras as you walk into the restaurants, as you leave. There is media there with their cameras, with footage. So to me, when we think of it as a question of rule of law, all these young people there who are limaing my life, they're plowing into him like a punching bag. Mm-hmm. Somebody has their pictures and knows who they are. The Pan-Afric Hotel knows which vehicles brought them in, and the license plates. We know which vehicles came into the hotel, who these people are. Were they working? They clearly were not working for Anthony Oloch. So who brought them? How did they know it is time to come beat up Anthony? So I think that's really bad. And I think if we're not honest to ourselves to say, you can't hold these ones accountable, then who will you ever hold accountable?
Are you saying none of them have been arrested?
None. There is no case proceeding. So, and I give it to you in the context of how violence and things we should not tolerate in this country. If you think of young people, let's say, blocking roads, this has been in the headlines. Young people, did they block a road in Kericho, in Awasi, or where? Rule of law. Why aren't they being held accountable? You can have a protest without blocking a road. And if you have a protest in which you're blocking a road and you're damaging vehicles, I don't know which SACCO had their vehicles damaged again. Mm-hmm. Those people should be arrested and prosecuted, because the moment they have done something criminal and gotten away with it, their sense of impunity and the example it sets for somebody else to get away with it is very high. And Honorable Sakaja has said it here. Nairobi is a tinderbox. So many young people who are unemployed, who are supposed to be getting hope for the future, but they are sort of hopeless. Mm-hmm. If they feel that the system of leadership and the governance is not really inclusive and giving them that hope, they can get desperate and they can get really attached to these issues that are political that even might look trivial. And one thing leads to another. Yeah. So mine is just 2 quick points. First of all is to apologize. I was there in the earlier part of that thing. I don't know what happened in between. I was on my way out when I was called and told, hey, there's a fight. And the next thing I know, before I got back there, someone's telling me Anthony has been taken to the Nairobi hospital. But number 2 is just to say, let's have accountability. These young people, the clips you can see right there, you can see who is doing it. The Honorable Sakaja was very gracious to step in and act as a shield to Anthony from being injured any further than he was. But even him could be a witness to say, who are these people? Yeah. And we should bring them in to have a dialogue and talk and forgive each other and explain to each other what is it that triggered you to come do this. So I think that's important. So I think I'll just leave it at that. But if you just sweep it under the carpet, it also doesn't help, because Anthony has supporters. Maybe his supporters know and can see the clips of who are those people who hit him. And one day, they'll want to revenge. So I think there has to be a discussion and a conversation that goes out of it. It's regrettable, but let's get something out of it that says, hey, what's going on here? You know, if you involve, for instance, Honorable Sakaja can apologize on behalf of the leadership. I can apologize on my own behalf.
And by the way, that's what I like about you too. Huh?
But the young person who struck Anthony, we should get him to a place where he apologizes to Anthony and Anthony to forgive him. It doesn't mean anything much if Sakaja and I apologize and Anthony and his people haven't accepted that apology or received it, and they're saying it's not in our place to apologize.
At least you guys are gentlemen enough to apologize, which is good. The other thing, speaking of tinderbox and goons, journalists being attacked at a NASA rally. That's wrong. That was wrong.
Absolutely wrong. We issued a statement and have apologized. Again, I'd speak to NASA supporters. Institutions work, and do not take the law into your own hands. Journalists are employees of their companies, and they are professionals. I had the allegation against Francis Kashuri was that Citizen was biased. I'm here on Citizen. And if Francis Kashuri works for Citizen, that's why he earns his living and practices his profession. He's a young man who wants a job, just like any other young person in this country. It's his right to have that job. And it is wrong to attack him for working for Citizen. You know, it is something that must be condemned. We condemned it yesterday, and my message to the NASA people and any NASA supporters is, please don't do things like that. The journalists have a code of conduct and things. Any issues with Citizen, they'll come to a time to protest, to resist, to boycott. You can say, don't watch Citizen if you disagree with Citizen, but do not attack Citizen journalists. You know.
Senator, is that what we've come to as a nation now? I mean, everyone and anyone is looking for scapegoats. They're looking for a punch bag. They're looking to let off steam.
I think, you know, I'm glad my colleague that NASA, or who have fashioned themselves to be, you know, fathers of the democratic ideals, are also within NASA, in as much as they're within Jubilee. So it cannot be that, Ken, if I don't agree with you, then the only way I will deal with you is by punching you or by organizing my boys. Now you're going to come out of studio, I'll have my boys outside here to deal with you. Then we don't have a future as a country. It's either anarchy or order.
Absolutely. And by the way, Francis Kashuri was very gracious. He said he wasn't hurt and he was okay, and he forgave the guys who...
That's Francis for you. Francis is someone well known to me. That's the kind of a gentleman he also is. Somebody else would have instituted proceedings or would have, you know, filed charges against the party, against those boys in court. But Kashuri has decided not to, to take it up further.
If you were Kashuri, would you attend another NASA press conference?
Yes.
Okay.
Because this country is a country that there are people who fought for the right of you to hold a view. And that in the words of, I think, is it Martin Luther or who? I may not agree with what you say, but I will forever defend your right to say it. People died for this, you know. So I would go back to the NASA meeting just to reinforce that point. And you know, during the campaigns, this is not how Nairobi was. Ken knows. I would campaign, for instance, where, you know, in NASA stronghold, so to speak, in the city, and they would listen. And if they don't agree with me, all they needed to do was to deny me a vote. You know, what have we come to in the 21st century? That the only way we can solve issues in this country is by violence, is by unleashing terror. And remember, Jeff, no one in this country has a monopoly of violence or terror. So you're saying that tomorrow then, if you unleash terror on me, then if I don't agree with you, then I also should unleash terror on you, then we've lost our country, if that's the way we're going.
Let's switch gears. NASA has said that it will begin a fresh wave of street protests next week. And the CEO, Norman Magaya, says a full list of products to be boycotted by NASA supporters will be released this week. Do you agree with this, Mheshimiwa, honestly? As a legislature, as a sober legislature from Kibra and Nairobi County, do you agree with this?
before I go to that, let me just talk about something. There was the issue of violence and terror and monopoly of violence that's just been mentioned. The fact of the matter is, since August 8th, we have seen a pattern where dissent, disagreement, having a different opinion is criminalized by the state and is punishable by immediate death penalty. Over 40 people have been killed in Nyanza. We need to talk about those lives, because the framework that Sakaja gives, and which I think we share, does not match the reality of the government which he is a part of has been doing in Nyanza. Over 40 people have been killed just for being of a different opinion and for daring to expose that opinion and go on the street. And we're in the process of burying them now. So again, when we talk about monopoly of violence, the state has the monopoly of violence. It has the tools of terrorism, and I can tell you, there's parts of this country right now living terrorized by their own government, feeling terrorized. And the sense of terror that you feel, that exists in this country. And then we must then dial back and ask ourselves, you know, it's one thing for us to have made a mistake and misjudgments amongst boys in Nairobi we know we can call and talk about. And sort it out.
And talk to them.
Yes. But it's another thing for government to go in, state security agents, Human Rights Watch has done this, Kenya National Commission on Human Rights has done the reports in Kisumu, knocking down doors, hitting innocent people in their homes who are not protesters. But even protesters who've come out on the street, instead of the state being proactive, like our police needs to be able to do so many different things, sophisticated ways in the 21st century of handling public safety and public order and public security. It cannot be that their only tool is, if you disagree with the government and you come out on the street and say, no reforms, no election, we tear gas you immediately. We shoot a bullet into your car. We've had this happen to 3 vehicles of MPs here in Nairobi. For what? You know, yet you step back and you ask, where are the arrests? If there are people who are breaking the law, where are the arrests? But my call is for the police to be a little bit more sophisticated, to have a greater tool set of handling Kenyans in the 21st century under the new constitution. And I know a lot of Kenyans will say, no, mukibishana na serikali mutamalizwa, mutanyoroshwa. That's very easy to say, because right now it's people of a different ethnic community from a different part of the country, from a different political party who are being nyoroshwad. The day it turns out that it's now your people who are being nyoroshwad just for having a difference of opinion, for voting in a different way or for refusing to vote, then it won't be very attractive anymore. So I think even as we talk about violence and the reality, the number of people who have died in this country since August 8 at the hands of police is so much more higher than we have seen in any other situation. So I think that's regrettable, and we need to honor those deaths and have us as leaders who care about this country to influence the key decision makers to say, as we proceed, do not criminalize dissent. Even if we disagree, even if Jubilee claims that they will run the country and they have won the election, they should not say they will run the country at the expense of anyone ever speaking up, because then we're going to totalitarianism. In a totalitarian system, you don't have a say in who governs you. And once you can't decide who governs you, you also can't say how you feel about it. At least in autocracy, you don't have a say on who governs you, but you can disagree and write about it and say, I don't like whoever is governing. But in a totalitarian state, you actually have to stand up and sing, like North Korea, and sing the praises of whoever governs you, whether you have a choice in that. So I think, to me, there is a danger in criminalizing dissent and brutalizing and trying to send a signal that scares people. It reaches a point in which people will just say, hey, we don't have faith in the state anymore, and they might even arm themselves and say, next time you come and our people are innocently in their homes, we won't just die on our knees, we'll be ready for you. And that will have taken us to a next level. So I think, to me, that is something important as we think about these things critically.
Good point.
Now, you asked me about boycotts.
Yes.
Those are legitimate civil disobedience strategies. You can choose a product you like or you don't like to send a message. You know, that's peaceful. No one's going to compel you to use one phone company over another. If you choose to switch, no one will force you to buy this brand of, I don't know, bread over this brand of bread. You can choose. If you want to make a political point, you can say from now on, I forswear bread because bread is made by the oppressors and the wheat farmers are all oppressing us, and we will forswear it. I'm just giving you an example.
I agree.
So that's legitimate.
Right.
So you're worried about that, but we should ask the question is, why are there a significant part of our population that's ready to forswear some bread or some milk or some phone company?
Yeah.
What is the source of their discontent? Because
let's start with the phone company.
yes.
Why the phone company? If it comes to that, if the leadership says, switch your network, don't use Safaricom. Why?
Wait for the list. Wait for the list. Wait for the list, and it will come out. Let's not jump the gun. Wait for the list.
Have you seen the list?
Wait for the list. No, I haven't seen the list. But
It's also ready to be told. But Jeff, let me say this.
Yes.
Number one, let me start from where my brother. And by the way, for the record, Ken Okoth is a member of ODM. He is my friend. I think my colleague tried to make that point, but he didn't make it well by saying he's paid for them tea. But he's my friend. I'm the chairman of the Young Parliamentarians Association. Ken Okoth is the treasurer of the same association across parties of all young people elected to parliament. And unfortunately, in this term, he has left us because he's gone beyond the threshold.
He's no longer youth.
He's no longer youth.
I'm
but
getting
what,
too old for this.
My Secretary General then was David Ochieng, also of ODM. Martha Wangari, then of UDF, was part of the officials, and we could agree that apart from politics, there's a common agenda that we want to push for young people in this country.
Regardless of political
parties. And that is something that we were already pushing and working on. And we are continuing to do that until Ken hands over to somebody else as treasurer. And I also choose to hand over, despite the fact that I'm still young, but I don't want to be the Robert Mugabe of youth politics. But let me say this point. First of all, I feel the pain of families that have lost loved ones, from wherever they may be, whether it is Nyanza, whether it is Nairobi. I'm waiting for the official tally, because we also have a habit as politicians to exaggerate numbers. It's good for us to have an official tally, because Ken is saying 40, yesterday I had somebody saying 90, I hear the police saying 15 or 10, whatever number it is, one life is more than necessary. None of those deaths were necessary. And I feel for them. And if truly any officer went into a house or looked for someone just to kill, and I choose to believe that our officers are also human, and they should have some form of humanity. If those excessive use of violence, those should be prosecuted because of doing that. Very few people also speak for the officers themselves, under attack. There's a young man who lost his life in Bungoma. He was allegedly snatching a gun from a police officer. I'm sure he was not snatching the gun to go into the forest to hunt antelopes, And many times we see, even in the videos and the pictures, the kind of violent provocation of these same officers. We've had people saying that, we are demonstrating, you have not thrown for us tear gas, and we have paid taxes, you want tear gas. And because of that, they'll hurl stones. Our constitution is clear. Every Kenyan has a right to demonstrate peaceably and unarmed. The minute they are no longer peaceful, and if they're armed, because you see them walking around with slings, with rungus and with all those arms in their pockets, in their hands. And I'm sure they're not going to a construction site to build using those stones. Those are not accessories, rocks that they are holding. It is to cause violence. Then they stop being demonstrators. They become criminals, and they are rioters. Now, there is no law in this land, either the constitution, an act of parliament, regulation, customary law, even traditional law, that protects any violent person on the streets or criminal, because some of them have stolen from people, they've broken into businesses. Last time there were demonstrations, we had to buy a matatu that was burnt, simply because I think it got a puncture on the way, and it was blocking them. They burnt it. What do you tell that lady who, in fact, that specific lady from Kayole, because I was there when he took her the new matatu, is a widow, that was her life savings, she put into that. What do you tell the person in Kawangware whose fingers were chopped off because they had ink? You know, if you come to Equity, come with clean hands. You cannot only decry the loss of lives or the deaths, which are very unfortunate. My own people have lost lives, you know, a few. But you cannot decide that only those lives matter. The lives of police don't matter. The lives of those who are innocent Kenyans who went to vote despite intimidation, but have been attacked, you know. So this notion that if you don't agree with something, use violence to stop it, really must be addressed. And finally, those Kenyans who chose not to vote have a right. And that right must be respected. But what do we see happening? In only 9%, unfortunately we must say, it's very fortunate, that 91% of Kenya voted. 38,000 polling stations were opened. People voted. There were results even from Kibra constituency. There were results. But I cannot say that there'll be no election, you will not vote, and I remove that right from you to choose whether to vote or not. It's an inalienable right that I as Sakaja, you as Jeff, you as Ken, that right is not determined from anybody else. You don't get that right to vote from Uhuru Kenyatta. You don't get the right to vote from Raila Odinga. That right is your right. So if Raila Odinga or Uhuru Kenyatta or anybody doesn't want me to vote, they should allow me the opportunity to walk by the polling station and say, I'm not going to vote. But when you take the decision away from a Kenyan, that some people in Nyanza would have wanted to vote, but IBC officials are not allowed to get to the polling stations. There was violence. You blocked them through use of those goons or militia, as they're being called, because I don't know which other word to use to describe them, using violence to stop. Then you're actually usurping and taking away a Kenyan's right, a right that I've said has been fought for by even those same people, a right to choose whether to vote or not. And that is a contrast between Nyanza and Ukambani. Because in Ukambani, polling stations were open. Some people decided to go vote. Others declined to go vote. They exercised their right. In Nyanza, even those who might have wanted to vote did not have an opportunity to go vote. Even those who might not have wanted to vote, it was not their choice. Because the only two places where voting was allowed in Nyanza, Kisumu Town West and Muhoroni, there were votes. And I believe if every part of the former province, you know, in fact, let me say apart from Kisii and Nyamira, Luo Nyanza, if every station was opened, each and every of those stations, people would have expressed their will to vote or not to vote. So let us not say that the government is taking back our rights. Yet it is the opposition that is seriously and violently taking away those rights that are really hard fought for, Jeff. You know, it's really backward. It's dictatorial. It is retrogressive. It is not the Kenya of 2017. Yeah, and it's really unfortunate.
Ken, I know you want to comment on that, don't you?
I think Honorable Sakaja has touched on very many points. I think the second part of his argument is he's already just building an argument around the legitimacy of what happened on the 26th, whether it was a real election or a sham election. So I won't go into that. The 2 points I would quickly mention is it's a disgrace to keep talking about Luo Nyans as if Luos are not Kenya. You know, the orders of the Supreme Court were that an election shall be held according to the dictates of the Constitution and the laws that existed. And there was a very wide and broad, clear thing that so many ingredients went up to and including the day of voting. And it was not just a purely technical thing of deliver ballot materials and people vote. There was a lot of questions to be addressed. Remember, we had irreducible minimums and a sense of injustice around those irreducible minimums and a level of theft. Those matters are going to be canvassed in court by the lawyers. So that I'll just leave on the side.
Absolutely.
But simply to say, the first point that Honorable Sakaja started with is whatever we agree to disagree upon is let us never be in a point where we say, if you're holding a stone in your hand or a sling, the punishment is death by bullet. There are people in this country who have stolen billions, and Jubilee is comfortable with them. And they've never been shot to death. You know, immediate death, execution by bullet. There are people in this country who've stolen money for healthcare, so that babies are dying in hospital, patients who are HIV positive don't have their ARVs because money is being looted by the sackful out of the government. and none of them has been shot. So if you tell me today that a frustrated young person or an angry young person with a slingshot should be shot to death, and that is, let's just go ahead and put it in law, because I'd be happy to have that discussion as a parliamentarian. Let's make that law, then our police use it. But right now, when our police do that, they're breaking the existing laws, the constitutional right to life, they are breaking the anti-torture law, they're doing so many things that are wrong. So if that's the law that Sakaja and his team may want, let us make that law cleanly. They have the tyranny of numbers, and say from now on, if you go to a demonstration with a stone in your hand, death immediately on the spot, then that's fine.
Yeah.
Let's put that law. But that law does not exist. And our police do not have the luxury to hide under any other law to say that's the law they are using. So I totally disagree on that.
Okay, good point. Gentlemen, you mentioned, Senator, you mentioned you two are friends.
Yeah.
You guys hang out. You have a coffee.
When we can't avoid it.
So,
no, but we do.
So we are the fools then. That's what we are, the fools. And don't answer just say, it's probably yes, but because we're the ones who follow you to whatever it is that you do, but you all are friends. The president and NASA leader Raila Odinga are friends.
Jeff.
Hold the thought. We're going to take a break, come back. In the meantime, Monica, we have some new numbers. Okay, what do they say? The question was, are these two, Senator Johnson Sakaja and Member of Parliament for Kibra, Ken Okoth, are they what we consider the future of Kenya? 69% of you say yes, not bad. 31% of you say no. This is good. This is one of the highest we've ever gotten. Excellent.
I never
Texting.
know what to make out of this question.
Okay.
This question is a clickbait question.
Okay, let me ask you a different way.
Yeah.
Would you ever run? Oh, you're probably going to run for president one day. And you are too.
No. Not interested.
Okay, good. You are. Maybe. Let's keep it out there.
You never know. Jeff.
Would you be his running mate if you switch parties?
I'm not interested. I have a fantastic job as a member of parliament for Kibra. I thank and respect the people of Kibra for giving me this job twice.
By the way,
I was born and raised in Kibra.
A Somali in Eastleigh wants to know, is it Kibra or Kibera?
It's Kibra.
So, out of respect to the Nubians, eh?
Yes.
So I'm happy.
You're happy to be MP?
I am living the dream as an MP for Kibra. Serving my people, I know the problems of Kibra. I know where things are rough, where things are smooth, where things are light, where things are heavy. We're fighting all those burdens, and it's a full-time job. Look at my gray hair. I don't want any other job. I'm happy at this job.
Okay.
Yes.
Sakaja, you're going to have to look for a new running mate then.
No, who said I'm running? I've not even, and I can't wait for all this drama.
We know one day
there's so much work to be done in Kibra yet, which we need to speak about the work we need to do in Kibra. Yeah, there's no time to run for any other thing. Let's finish the work in Kibra.
By the way, we have a library we need to stock up in Kibra. We'll talk about it.
I have so many things I want to do in Kibra as Senator of Nairobi.
Look at that. Yeah. Jeff Koinange Live takes a break. Plenty more ahead. We're talking to the future of Kenya. Any way you look at it, whether they like it or not, they are the future. Jeff Koinange Live. We'll be back in a moment.
You're watching JKL, brought to you by
Telkom, moving with you.
Introducing the Freedom Data Bundle, the only data bundle that gives you free SMS, free WhatsApp, and free Telkom to Telkom calls. Dial *544# today and